Welcome to the GCN Tech Clinic, where Connor and I aim to answer your bike tech and maintenance related questions. As ever, you can submit your questions down below in the comment section using the hashtag AskGCNTech, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as possible
in the allotted time.
Yes.
There we go.
Right. Who's up first?
So Nico 3794 is up first. Sent this one in. I want to make the jump from a 175mm to a 165mm crankset on my Canyon Grail. Should I go for a 40 or 46 tooth chainring? My current one is 42 tooth SRAM rival axis. Cheers and keep up the good work.
You've been doing it. You've been switching. I mean, you're a big lad, and you've switched down to 165s.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a really hot topic at the moment. We delved into it on the channel. If you haven't seen the video, do check it out. It's been much talked about. I felt like when I was reading about what was happening and why people were choosing to go short, it resonated with me. So I gave it a go. And cut a long story short, I'm like totally sold on short cranks. I think it's been so beneficial to my ride, and I felt so much more comfortable as a result, just overall in my position, everything. But yeah, if you want more in-depth look, do check out the video and I'll explain more of my reasoning why. But gearing is something you really do need to take into account if you go shorter. So what I'd say is doing that's quite a big jump from 175 to 165. So I'd choose a much smaller chainring at the front, because when you do go to a shorter crank, it's like you're giving yourself a bigger gear.
That's counterintuitive, I think.
Yeah, it's really counterintuitive to get your head round. But essentially, think about it I like to think about things in extremes to work out what a minimal change would make. So imagine like a tiny crank and trying to push that round at the same speed. Imagine you're at like 100 RPM. You'd be absolutely spinning that thing round if it was extrapolated out to a big crank. So yeah, you need an easy gear. I might not have explained that well, and if you're still confused, what I would do is head over to Sheldon Brown's gear calculator.
Good old Sheldon.
Yeah, because he's got one of his calculators takes into account crank length, and then you can really kind of accurately work it out. And if you want the exact same gearing, you can get that, or you can change it to go a bit lower.
Yeah, cool, man. And next question is from Hermenda Rowe, who says, when I'm looking for a second wheel set for my bike, including a cassette, racing wheels for a gravel bike, what measures or components should match exactly, which should match more or less, and which don't matter at all? Do I need a second chain too? Details like disc brakes, GRX 400 group set, and they're running 2x10 speed. No, I would say. You should just be able to swap a set of wheels in for a set of wheels. You do find that sometimes your rotors might not align up perfectly on certain wheels.
Yeah, you might have to just tweak them a little bit.
And so with your disc brake rotor, it might just rub when you put one wheel set into another. But they should, because they are set to a certain axle standard on hubs now, they should work and be cross-compatible. There are a few rare exceptions where they're not going to be. For example, back in the day, on the older version of the Cannondale Topstone, they designed that bike in such a way that the rear wheel had to be dished outboard to fit into that bike because of its asymmetric design, which meant that you couldn't just swap any old wheel into that bike. If you bought a new set of wheels, you had to get them re-dished. That is the dishing. It refers to the position of the hub relative to the rim of the wheel, so it was spaced to cross over.
Yeah.
Annoying. Thankfully, on the new one, they don't have that anymore. But there may be a few other instances on a few random, rare examples of particular bikes where you might face that problem, but that is a rare issue. In most instances, most wheels will fit into most bikes. And also, just 700C wheels, unless you want to go down to a smaller wheel. That could be an option as well. Go to a 650, and then you can fit bigger volume tyres on a gravel bike. Just check that your bike is compatible with that. The information on the manufacturer's website will tell you.
Yeah, there you go. Tim Bridgman, 8236. Has wheel balancing ever been tested for performance and a balanced crankset? Also, years ago, pro cyclists used to stick their tongues out to absorb more oxygen. Was this ever proven to work, or was it found to be a myth? Great show, guys. Keep up the good work. I've never heard the one about sticking tongues out.
No, I think when Askren won in the Giro the other day, he's described as like the human motorbike, but he does have this thing of riding along with his mouth agape, like drawing in air.
I think I do this.
It makes sort of sense. It's not very. well, yeah, it's big, like huge, like intercooler. But like the
Basket shark.
yeah, like a basket. Tony Martin always used to do it, right? You know, he was time traveling along. But as regards to like, so yeah, we don't know about that. I've never heard any.
I can't imagine it being a performance benefit.
Yeah, I don't know.
Other than being able to breathe.
It'd be quite a fun thing to test in a wind tunnel next time we're in one. Mouth open versus mouth closed. Stay tuned for that. Subscribe so you don't miss it when we eventually get around to doing that. But with regards to wheel balancing, I've actually got a feature that's going to come out on this topic. Now, in my investigations, there has been tests done on it, and I'm leaning towards yes. We did some tests as well. We're not gonna spoil the results, but
I don't want to be a spoiler.
Yeah, I think stay tuned for that one. Unfortunately, I don't want to reveal the full
intriguing.
results.
Intriguing is what I'm saying.
Blooming interesting.
Yeah.
Next, Barry Baker.
Yeah, every time you talk about what savings, you extrapolate it out to a full race. But in reality, most racers spend most of the time at maximum effort. So if one guy is using 80% of his max in the peloton and another is using 77%, who cares? How much does saving a few watts in a sprint matter?
Well, yeah, but I think you're misunderstanding how wattage savings work. So if you're talking about, say, the wattage savings you get in rolling resistance from a set of tyres or your drivetrain, you're pretty much getting that the whole time. You're not just getting it when you're pushing hard.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
it all adds up over the course of a race.
Yeah, and the whole point is to extrapolate those savings, because if you talk about, say, oh, it makes you, a few seconds quicker here, then in isolation that doesn't sound like much, but it's when you add that up over the course of a huge Gran Fondo, it's hugely significant. I think the other thing is that they can be more significant at certain moments as well, because saving 2 seconds or being, that can be the difference between staying on the wheel and not getting dropped as a crucial moment of a race. And so then, or, if you are trying to win a sprint, it can be crucial at that moment as well. Yeah. So then it would, being able to not get dropped at that key moment, that could then result in, 10 minutes saved over the course of the event because you were able to stay in the wheels.
Yeah, and I think in a sprint as well, it's actually like the most important place because the speeds are so high. Like wind resistance, air resistance is really like the full enemy of the sprinter. And if you're doing 70, 80 upwards k an hour, that's when it's really going to count, just for those like little lunges to the line. So, yeah.
And there's a general rule of thumb as well that, again, and we've said this before, but I'm going to keep saying it because not everyone seems to get the memo, is that when you talk about the typical, say, wattage savings that you get from any given piece of equipment, it is always higher at higher speeds and higher power outputs, okay? So people who are riding at lower speeds and lower power outputs go, well, it's not relevant to me then. Well, there's an interesting quirk of the maths, which is that when you're out on course longer, although the saving you're getting is less, because you're out on course longer, it usually adds up to be roughly the same overall.
Interesting.
So, there you go.
Yeah. We all have to pay attention to the aero.
The race is going to be hard. Don't make it any harder.
That's a good
point. So next question is from Georgiev, who says, I want to replace 32mm tyres with wider, more comfortable tyres for my Crux, which is a gravel bike. He's bought 35mm tyres, and they're Contis, and he said when he mounts them, they're 31.9mm with the correct pressure on 19mm in a rim. Why is that? And do I have to buy 38mm to have the desired 35mm, or do I have to buy some new wheels that are 21mm internal width?
So it's the internal width is going to change the external width of the tyre, depending on the wheels you're using.
But it's, I don't know what your feelings are on this, but I wouldn't stress.
No, don't worry about it.
It is what it is. It's normal.
Yeah.
And different tyres measure up differently when inflated. So you could have 2 tyres from 2 different brands that are both quoted as being 28mm tyres. One might measure up on the same rim as 29, and one might measure up as 27.9. It depends on the shape and the construction of that tyre.
Yeah.
They are all a little bit different, and it's just is what it is. Like Continentals do often come up quite wide, in my experience, whereas some of the brands come up true to size, some others come a bit smaller.
Yeah.
But it just sort of is what it is. The most important thing is what you're actually, I think you're doing, which is measuring what the actual width is with some calipers, and then you can set your pressure correctly for the measured width. Don't just, when you use a tyre pressure calculator, do measure what your tyres blow out to and get the correct measured width.
Yeah. And I think as well, the fact you're happy with the tyre, feel comfortable, the clearance is okay as well.
Yeah.
So, don't stress it. Next up from Exardus Von Lorian. Hi guys, enjoy your show. How do I know when my cassette and chain rings need replacing? They won't last indefinitely even when I wax and stay on top of chain wear, will they? So the best thing I'd recommend is a chain checker tool to check for chain stretch and wear.
Yeah.
As first port of call.
Yeah, cheap to get, and a really useful tool to have just in your home workshop.
Yeah. What about cassette wear, Ollie?
Well, usually when you change your chain and you put one, if your chain has got worn and you don't have a chain checker tool, once you change your chain and you put a new one on, that's usually when people find out they have worn chain rings or cassette, because the gears are jumping and they weren't before, because the old chain has worn it in the worn cassette. So that's one way. The other way is you can visually look at it and just, you can see when the teeth are worn. They become sharper sort of points, like I don't know, someone that's eaten too many sweets.
Yeah.
It's just kind of...
It's not a nice sight when you see that on your cassette.
No.
There's a side to change.
Yeah. And that's the thing to look out for. But chain sets and cassettes last a blooming long time if you're staying on top of your chain wear and not using worn chains.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. But yeah, that's the best way.
Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. What time now for the last question this week, which is Bat Porio. He says, hi, I'm upgrading my wheels and hoping to reuse current ones on a gravel bike. Will I be able to fit gravel tyres on road wheels? The model is a Giant SLR1 and the wheels have an internal width of 22.4 millimetres and they're 36 mil deep. Thanks.
I think the easier answer is yes.
Well, Alex, he's gone over to Unbound as we film this, and he's using road wheels.
Yeah.
He's using Dura Ace C50s, which have a 21 millimetre internal width, and he's using gravel tyres on those for the biggest gravel race in the world. So that's a simple answer, yes, you can.
There you go.
But yours being even wider than that, yeah, I think should be fine.
Be a problem. Yeah.
What you tend to find with gravel-specific wheels, though, is they can be a little bit wider, and they can also have extra spokes, and maybe spokes that are not the super lightest, thinnest, aeroist spokes. That's not a word, I made it up. But they're built to withstand higher impact loads.
A little bit more durable.
Stronger wheel.
No.
And so, because your off-road's a bit rough. So that's the other big difference that you should just be aware of.
Yeah. But there you go. Hope that answers your questions and all of your questions. Do send in more with the hashtag.
Please send in more.
Yeah. Hashtag AskGCNTech. I've got that right, haven't I? AskGCNTech.
Yeah.
There you go.
I've only been here 6 years.
I've got a funny
Nice one, mate. Right. Cool, we're going to go now. Love you. Bye.
Bye-bye.